Right now, the world looks like it's breaking down. We've got a war in Iran, energy prices are skyrocketing, private credit starting to crack, and AI threatening jobs. And the market is responding to Bitcoin in two ways.
Bitcoin is going to die. I don't mess with it.
You think Bitcoin is going to die?
Oh.
You touch nothing with crypto?
I don't touch it.
We've got a war in Iran. We've got a spike, at least for now, 8-day spike in energy prices. We've got AI disruption concerns. We've got cracks in private credit, and we have a weaker jobs report. How do you invest right now?
Buy Bitcoin.
The US government just proved it can shut an entire country out of the global financial system. Scott Bessent lays out how the US started its war with Iran back in November of last year and even caused their currency to collapse. So here's the real question. If the dollar system can be weaponized, then what is money? Because while people still argue about Bitcoin, the 20 millionth Bitcoin was just mined, and companies like MicroStrategy are buying tens of thousands of Bitcoin at a time. Today, I want to show you why the war in Iran, the cracks in the private market, and the weaponization of the dollar might just be the best thing to ever happen to Bitcoin. When the world finally understands Bitcoin and its true value, there's going to be none left. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
Bitcoin is a resilient asset that is really serving as global insurance. And so anytime that there's chaos in the world, there's going to be people who run to Bitcoin. Gold also serves as that use case, but I think that more and more people, especially as young people get a little bit older, they get a little bit more money, they start to go and they buy Bitcoin in times of uncertainty. And I think institutions also, what is misunderstood is that in the institutions, the young people 10 years ago, they're now rising to the role of the portfolio manager or the CIO. And so they also will start to continue to add Bitcoin into their portfolios as well. And I think you see Bitcoin performing pretty well given what's happening right now.
When asked how he is positioning his portfolio amidst of all of this global chaos, Pomp's answer sounded simple. Buy Bitcoin. But the reason he's saying this is deeper than most people realize. Here's why people are moving away from the traditional system.
President Trump gave the order for Treasury to exert a maximum pressure campaign on Iran. I said in a speech at the Economic Club of New York in March that I predicted that the Iranian currency would collapse, that we would see the economy collapse thanks to this maximum pressure. So we have been softening up the economy and preparing the ground for what our great warriors are doing right now. So the Iranian economy was vulnerable. We cut off the dollar supply into Iran. All of their oil is sanctioned. We've been able to keep the funds, many of the funds out of Iran. One of the largest banks collapsed in December. The central bank was forced to print a huge amount of money. Inflation ensued, and people took to the streets. So there was an economic crash in Iran in December, and now we have the opening to go in, and our military is taking over from the sky and from the sea.
This is probably the most mind-blowing clip I've seen in a long time. The US has been coordinating an attack on Iran since late last year. The Treasury cut off Iran's access to dollars, collapsing their currency and freezing their capital markets altogether. And there's people that still say that the dollar system is neutral. It's not. It's a weapon. And once the world sees that, people are going to start asking the question, what happens if I'm next? And the world is starting to see the signs of cracks are starting to show. And that's why smart people are opting out of the system by not using the traditional banking system. They're using companies like Ledn, which allow you to unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. Never sell your greatest asset. Borrow against it at rates starting at just 12.4% with no credit checks, and the money gets in your account in less than 6 hours. It can be repaid at any time, and you don't have to rely on the global banking system. Go to learn.ledn.io/simply to get started. Now, while all of this geopolitical tension is rising, another problem is quietly forming. It's in the private credit markets. Some analysts warn that if private credit defaults approach 15%, that it's just going to be in the private credit markets. Well, that's not true. If the private credit market crashes, the entire market is likely to crash. Here's a clip from John Zito, the CEO of Apollo Asset Management, one of the largest private credit players in the world.
I think there's still a complete misunderstanding of what that represents in the economy, meaning 8,000 private companies, broadly diversified. Obviously, some asset managers more than others, but if the private credit market goes through, as UBS said, a 15% default rate, the idea that the public high yield market, the public equity market, all these public markets would be completely fine while the entire private debt market melts, The likelihood of that is extremely, extremely low. And it's been interesting to see how the public markets will say that this will have a very big problem, but everything else will be fine.
Do you reject that type of assessment by Matt Mish over at UBS?
Listen, I think if you read the piece, it was a little bit taken out of context. I think it was kind of his severe bear case, and there's some probability that that can happen. And again, anybody can go out and say that the tail looks like this, and it could. But to say that it will only happen there and that we shouldn't be worried about all these other markets, when in fact we're senior debt on all these other markets, that, again, not really logic behind that, but for whatever reason, it's definitely the story of the day.
Well, this is him responding to a hit piece written about him about what happens if private credit is wiped out. Think about that for a second. There's trillions of dollars affecting thousands of companies sitting outside of traditional banks. This is all at a time with rising rates and slowing growth. When the credit breaks, there's only two options, and let free market capitalism play out, or print money in paper over it. This is the path that Bitcoin billionaire Arthur Hayes thinks that the central banks will take, because historically, they always do.
The banks are bailed out by governments, just like they always have been. So the central bank has a choice. Do I allow this credit destruction to happen and the free market to operate and, bad credits to be worth zero and clear? Or do I do like I've done every single other crisis, say, oh, the banking system's in trouble. There's all this debt that's worth zero. To keep the system going, I will underwrite it by printing the money to cover the losses. And that's how crypto goes up markedly, because all that liquidity flows to the scarce assets.
Now, while all of this is happening, you can realize while the central bank is breaking and they're printing money, that should be about the time when you start to remove your sovereignty out of that system and take it for yourself. Work with a team at the Bitcoin Way to set up your own bank, your own private node with your own private keys. And don't be worried about being shut out of the financial system like Scott Bessent and the US Treasury did to Iran. Be sovereign. Get an expert to help you learn how to do this the right way. Schedule a free 30-minute meeting with the team at thebitcoinway.com/Dante. Now, while all of this was happening, something crazy happened in the Bitcoin network. The 20 millionth Bitcoin was mined. 95% of the entire supply is out there. That means that the supply coming onto the market from now until when Bitcoin completely almost stops, and never completely stops, is going to be really small. And demand is rising. Companies like MicroStrategy are buying almost 18,000 Bitcoin at a time for $1.28 billion. They own over 738,000 Bitcoin, or more than 3% of the total supply. And that's the thing. When the world finally starts to understand Bitcoin, it's going to be too late and there's going to be none left to buy. Now, not everybody sees it that way. Let's go back to the Terrence Howard clip.
Bitcoin is going to die. I don't mess with it.
You think Bitcoin is going to die?
Oh.
You touch nothing with crypto?
I don't touch it.
Tell me why you think it's going to.
Well, I just got a call from somebody a couple of days ago and said, hey, if you got 25 million, you can make 75,000. I just want to put it inside of an account to do some stuff. And this is a friend of mine. And I was like, do you realize that Bitcoin is still based on fiat? It's still, and because the dollar is decreasing in its value, because the uncertainty of war around, nobody wants their money in something that can be wiped out with a push of a button somewhere. I've stayed free and clear of it because it's been dropping a great deal.
And to be fair, this is a normal thing that a lot of people fear. They look at the war, they look at volatility, and they assume that Bitcoin is a risky asset, one that can be cut off at a push of a button. But that's not entirely true. That's not how the Bitcoin network works. What's actually risky is having your money in the existing banking system, which Scott Bessent and the United States government just proved they can shut you off at any time. What's riskier, the system that's sinking or the escape hatch, the Titanic or the life raft on the side of the boat? Bitcoin was created after the financial crisis. It was designed for a world where institutions fail, currencies collapse, and the trust fails in the system. War is exposing the assumptions that everybody held so dear in real time. It's exposing that financial sanctions are still a real thing. Debt is exposing the fragility of the credit system. And scarcity is exposing the value of a financially scarce asset like Bitcoin. People think Bitcoin is just another trade, but moments like these reveal what it actually is: a parallel system, an alternative network, a form of money that the government cannot turn off. And the more the world sees how the current system actually works, the more valuable the alternative comes. But you'll be ready, because you subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking. One of the ways you can continue to stack while also securing the network and becoming a more sovereign individual is buying Bitcoin not just through spot, but through mining. But you don't know how to pick the right machine. You don't know how to set it up. You don't know how to maintain it. You don't know how to keep it running all the time. You don't know how to do the repairs. Outsource that to the team at SAS Mining. Use the QR code to get started with Bitcoin mining that's hassle-free and done with 100% clean, renewable energy. Get sats flowing right directly to your wallet and stay sovereign. We're out.